Welcome to The Briefing Room. The Briefing Room is a flagship interview series at Global Policy Commons where we bring together scholars, experts, leaders, and practitioners from around the world to explore how ideas turn to action and how policy can become more inclusive, participatory, and transformative. Our second guest is Yossef Ben Meir. Without further ado, here is Yossef Ben Meir, President of High Atlas Foundation and former Associate Peace Corps Director.
Today, we're honored to speak with Dr. Yossef Ben Meir, President of the High Atlas Foundation, HIF, a Morocco-based NGO that has long championed participatory development, environmental sustainability, and youth empowerment. If I may, HIF work has been deeply resonating with GPC's mission to build policy literacy, inclusive participation across the global south. And that's why today I would like to explore with you on how communities can take ownership of development, how youth can drive transformative change, and how policy can really become public. So, Dr. Ben Meir, if you may, both HNF and GPC has shared this commitment, right, to empowering communities and amplifying local voices. So, if you can tell me more about what inspired your longstanding dedication to community-led development in Morocco, and how do you think HIF's mission evolved from its very beginning?
Well, initial inspiring moments, I think, are pretty memorable. Community meetings in the early 90s really were, focused so much on clean drinking water and the affliction of diseases that come about when we don't have a clean source, and the infant mortality that is visited upon every home, at least where I lived in the rural areas of the Toubkal municipality. And so it was, just horrifying, the amount of children, infants lost to waterborne diseases. And of course, the illnesses that are visited upon adults. And so I just, I, of course, just recall particular expressions and moments as these conditions were described and shared, and also realizing, which is the second most impressionable thing about it all, is how manageable change really is, and what projects take to alleviate these situations. And not just in terms of public health, but in terms of livelihood and income and food security, and environmental management, and all the different priorities that communities seek, members of farming families want in their lives. So it's really the stories, I guess, in the end, and the opportunities that they identify that makes it such a compelling work that really impossible to walk away from. And that really, in the end, also informed the mission of the High Atlas Foundation, which was founded in 2000. Our mission is entirely focused on community's own analysis, on their prioritization of projects, on their empowerment to build their vision and pursue the goals that they determine for themselves. It ends up to be, we focus heavily on agriculture, but that's because 80% of rural incomes come from agriculture. Our mission is really the assisting them of creating the plans for the future that they want.
Right, that's correct. And you've now so spent more than 2 decades, which is incredible, right? Reaching 3 in Morocco?
Yeah, reaching, I guess, 32 years in
That
Morocco.
Is insane. 33 years, yeah.
Yeah.
Working on this participatory models of development. And
Yeah.
if you can say today, what does participation really mean to you, and what are the challenges that comes with it, and how did HIF address them?
Well, the idea, it's a good question. Participation, it means a lot of things to a lot of people, but I will say that in order for it to be sincerely achieved, we need to launch the community-driven experience with empowerment, with building self-confidence. It's personal. It's done in group settings. For us, methodologically, participation is about one's own analysis of their own life, looking at their social relationships, emotions, outlook of money, of work. Now, it's done in collective settings, but you want to end up with an action plan that reflects the each person's interests and aspirations, but also the groups as a whole. Projects that meet the one and the many goals in life that are had and that are discovered by the very people who not just create the design of projects, but also implement them and manage them, evaluate them, benefit from them, and have overall control. So that would be participation. That it begins with an empowering, personal strengthening experience, leading to the identification of projects that meet the goals of the one in many of that community locality.
Right. So now, if we can talk about different levels of things happening in Morocco, right? We're approaching HNF as a very grassroots organization, but it's actually working within the framework, right, of the national policy making process. So when you bridge that, you bridge the grassroots actions and policy impact, right, through participatory mapping, women's cooperatives, and sustainable agriculture initiatives like planting trees and other agricultural products. How do you connect the local voices to the national or regional policy making progress?
Now, it's important to first mention that in Morocco, there is the national frameworks, the policy context that enables communities to make decisions regarding their development future. So it's in the municipal charter. It's in the National Initiative for Human Development, which is a major funding program, but creates the guideline for sustainable development to take place. Decentralization is in the Constitution. So you have all of these legal frameworks to launch and create community-driven change. So that's our policy context. Now, when we embark on these processes at the local level, projects become determined. Tree agriculture, artisanal cooperatives, family literacy, waste management, cultural preservation, all the different objectives that communities have set for their going forward. Now, you want policy. So on the one hand, we're in a enabling environment for these kinds of local initiatives to unfold. We can create associations and cooperatives and businesses and jointly plan and pursue funding and submit proposals and build partnerships and reach out to government at different levels and tiers. And so now all of this is incredibly hard and nothing is given, but there isn't a policy barrier of any sort to stop this from happening. And in fact, we're encouraged. Now, you therefore want policies to then adapt or become reformed based on the community's experiences at an aggregate sort of level. So in that communities determine they want fruit trees and therefore need to build nurseries. And in order to build nurseries, they need land because they can't give up their land. They have to harvest the barley and corn or whatever it is they're growing every year. They can't forego land for a nursery in order to transition to fruit trees. So therefore, we need the agency that has jurisdiction over public land, which is different agencies, but most predominantly the National Agency of Waters and Forests. We need land from them. So therefore, they need to adapt their policies in order to accommodate communities' own goal of transitioning from barley and corn to fruit trees. So we have to reverse our kind of thinking in that if the question is, how do communities adapt to national policy? Well, we have a national policy that allows communities to determine their future course in terms of development. And then therefore, through that kind of broad-based experiences, if you look at them on the aggregate, they're all asking for land for nurseries. And so therefore, it's not the communities that need to adapt, but policy needs to accommodate the goal of communities, and that they need to be able to identify public land for them to be able to build their nurseries. That's just one example. If you look at funding, I mentioned the National Initiative for Human Development, which it's a multi-billion-dollar, multi-year program to fund community projects. So they may have they may decide for whatever reason they're not going to fund construction, which has happened, or they're not going to fund agricultural projects. That's up to the Ministry of Agriculture, not them. Or that we're only going to accept proposals out of a certain time of year, or we're only going to accept, which is the case, technical, highly, we need well-developed skills in proposal writing to be able to access the funding. Or they're requiring that the community has 25% of the amount that they're asking for, which is a huge amount that communities don't have. So based on the community experiences, it's up to the National Initiative for Human Development to adapt that. They need to decrease the threshold from 25% to far, far less of what they're willing to accept for projects, to fund projects. They need to fund projects in any sector that communities determine. So what I'm saying is that they need to adapt and reform as an institution to accommodate communities' goals and not the other way around. Mm. Now, what does that take? That takes writing and meeting and advocating and not stopping, and we're free to write and publish, and we have a context where we can do that too. And so you want to inform policymakers of how they can better adjust their positions in order to enable more sustainable growth at the local level. And as an organization, we need to take very seriously that responsibility of conveying community experiences to policymakers to create an even more enabling environment.
Right. And this is what really one of the outstanding features of HIF, right? That many other development programs focus on technical training. But HIF the motto has always been about building civic and social awareness, right? And what do you think in that the educational empowerment that in your programs that you try to implement, why is that and policy understanding so closely linked? That people need to understand what's going on the national, or regional and the national level, and then how they can take advantage of that.
Yeah, it's really important. One of the things that we seek to do is that once communities, and how do we define a community? A shared geographic space, shared institutions, shared language, shared history, shared culture, shared um, natural resources. Okay. Um, Now, once they've gone through determination, our highest priority is clean drinking water. Our highest priority is um, this cooperative, managed, controlled, and based on the production activity as determined by women or youth, and so forth. Once that there's their clarity as to what they want to achieve most of all, that is going to then point to certain government institutions that then could be helpful toward achieving those goals. So if it's agriculture, you want to reach out to the Ministry of Agriculture. If it's artisanal or a cooperative, there's an agency, ODECO, that helps train or provide information in order how to create a cooperative and all the regulatory requirements in order to maintain it. The Ministry of Youth and Sports can play a helpful role toward youth integration in local decision making, in the creation of their organizations, and so forth. So once, but you don't want to introduce partners too soon, because you want communities to have a free exploration of what they want in their lives without any sort of ministerial strategy or priority sort of dictating that, or a donor's priority dictating that. You want to first have an open canvas where communities can make these kinds of self assessments for the future. Okay. But once that gets to a point of defined projects, the related government agencies and potential partners need to be integrated into those experiences. And that's where the sort of awareness raising, sensitizing, advocacy, all that kind of engagement can occur. And it goes both ways. So communities can convey their highest goals in terms of projects for growth, and ministries can convey what is possible and what they can provide and what they can't. And so there, it has to be, those partnerships or potential ones need to be introduced early in the process, but not early to the point that it may skewer the community's own determination of what's important to them.
And now if we can talk about the youth, that both of our organizations see youth as essential agents of change. And so what role do young people play in HF's projects, and how does the foundation encourage civic participation and cultivate this policy awareness among them?
Well, youth experience a disproportionate level of unemployment, of socioeconomic conditions that can be incredible obstacles toward their own fulfillment and satisfaction. And so, as a community development organization, you want to focus on where the needs are the most stark and severe. And so we focus primarily with women and youth, and our engagement really is it has to be multifaceted, because there's of course an incredible range, a vast range of conditions creates the challenges that youth face: urban youth, rural youth, youth in schools, youth not in schools, youth in the criminal justice system, or in, youth that are not, youth that are alienated and maybe inclined toward different ideologies, and those that are not, or less so. And so you have all these contexts. Now, in general, what you want to do is, and again, the methodology doesn't alter all that much. I mean, you want to create opportunities for youth to explore their hearts, explore their traumas, explore their relationships in their lives. Look at really what's most important to them and give them the support to crystallize that into an affirmation and an action that they can take, a next step. You want to be able to provide opportunities for them to strengthen their skills so that they can not only help people in terms of their own empowerment and community planning, but agroforestry skills, water management skills, how to create a cooperative, the skills that assist communities in their own self-generating growth. So you want to give youth the chance to discover what's most important to them, and then strengthen the capacities, their abilities to implement on a technical managerial level. So we do it for example, we have formal partnerships with 5 public universities. And in those universities, there is this kind of contact or programmatic opportunities, but also, for example, in the Mohammed I University up in Ujda, where I was last week, there we're implementing, with funding from the National Endowment for Democracy, with the legal aid students. So even as they do, as I described, they're also delivering pro bono legal aid with vulnerable communities, migrant communities, rural communities that have struggles with land title and family mediation situations. So it's empowerment and it's determination of goals and dreams, but also harnessing their capacities to deliver aid with people, legal aid, with people who need it most. And here in Marrakesh, it's with groups of 12 women, 12 men. It's for 14 months, 10 months living together, not the men and women, separate facilities entirely. But they're experiencing the discovery and what they want to create in their lives, but also wrap around skills building in environmental management, in agricultural development, in water infrastructural systems, in renewable energy, in medicinal plants, and other aspects of food generation. So, it's a non-university. These are people who left jobs or never had a job, but have this kind of intense, living, working, training with the same group of 12 based in Marrakesh, but traveling around the country, assisting community development. And that's the kind of way it unfolds in that situation. And there's other situations still that we have. We have a STEM lab that we're building at the University Qaidiya, the Faculty of Science here. And there again, it's of course empowerment and community planning, but through their application of science, technology, engineering, and math, and that's at the faculty, as I mentioned, the Faculty of Science there. So it needs to unfold in different ways, but the essential quality of it is their empowerment to the point where they can facilitate empowerment with others. They go through community planning experiences where then they can assist those processes with other communities, and then building their skills base in agroforestry, in legal aid, in the different areas I described, to give them the technical component to achieve community projects. That's a long answer.
And it's a very comprehensive answer. Very, very helpful. And yeah, so you see a common, I guess, dilemma, right, that many similar organizations face is this: if we put so much emphasis on the youth, does it imply that there will be a divorcing mechanism, that we separate these young people from their own community, right? How do we manage the unpredictable outcome, right, of the change we're trying to enforce? And then how does HIF ensure this empowerment does not translate, right, into conflicts, and how you build bridges instead between generations and between communities?
Between what in communities?
Generations and communities.
Generations and communities. Two important questions. So on the first, now our message, and certainly mine at every chance, is that we need to assist from where we come from. We need to assist our origins. We need to assist where we grew up. We need to assist where we're needed most. And we need to assist and begin where we have relationships. The Hyatt's Foundation began in the outside of Marrakesh, because that's where, as a former Peace Corps volunteer in the early 90s, that's where our relationships were, in the high Atlas Mountains, with the very partners or the counterparts that we had in the National Park Management at the National Agency of Waters and Forests. So, you want to catalyze where we can. And for many of us, that ability to do that is the places where our families are. And so now I described a program that brought youth from around the country, women and men, to do this, the year-long training, living together. And you're right, that's not training people where they are. I will say the vast majority, the 99% of the capacity building that we deliver is delivered to where people live and work, and where they will turn around and apply their knowledge or project opportunities in their home area. Now, one of the things that we seek to do with youth, and we've had proposals on it, they've been declined, but we just don't stop. You got to find a way, which is a lot. There's a significant number of students at public universities in Morocco who are from rural areas. And so we want to be able to, particularly women, and women and men, but we want to focus on women who are at universities from rural places, and build the skills and empowerment in all the ways described, but then support them to return back to where they're from, in order to apply the empowerment experiences and community planning and project identification and implementation and management and all that it takes to move forward on enhancing lives. So we want to give rural young people who are studying at universities the support they need in order to return to their rural communities and assist the knowledge and skills that they gained through our Hylas Foundation programs. That's that was our last proposal we sent to USAID, which didn't get through. But you're absolutely right. We want to train people where they're from. Look, most of the Highest Foundation staff are not in Marrakesh, even though our headquarters are here. They live and work where they're from. And that's a key part. And I don't look, I'm a former Peace Corps volunteer. There have been 7,000 Peace Corps volunteers just in Morocco since the early 60s. It's not a model that will ever alleviate poverty because it doesn't train people where they are. It's relying on volunteers who come and go. And that's even as good as it is and helpful as it is, and it, meant incredible things to a lot of people in Morocco, profound changes in life. It doesn't create a structural transformation that could end or really reduce levels because the nature of the Peace Corps program is going, and it's just not a sustainable way of keeping up the momentum necessary for social change. So we're very aware of that, and at the same time, these kinds of volunteer programs that do bring people together, Moroccans, and then they go back to where they're from, that has its place within an overall multifaceted strategy of engaging young people.
Incredible. Can you just quickly comment on the ongoing Gen Z movements, which are rapidly shaping countries around the world in Bangladesh, Nepal, Kenya, Peru, and also, of course, in Morocco? How do you envision this youth participation shaping the future of governance and development? We're running out of time, so if you could just wrap it up a little bit.
Okay. Just to say very quickly, first of all, we need to sincerely listen and appreciate and internalize and do better, invest more, enable their creation of their projects, of their future that they want to achieve in their lives. The pain that youth experience, it's so daunting when the conditions are so not supportive enough. A third of youth, at least, and that's are unemployed. It's devastating. It's a depression level. It's relentless. It's rural and urban. It's severe. It's alienating. And they need to themselves create the change, create the development projects that fulfill their hearts. They need to utilize the context that they have, at least in Morocco, to plan and act and build and maintain and grow and generate livelihood and find the invest. It's on the one hand, it's so hard. On the other hand, it's achievable. But sometimes it also comes down to, that's why launching with empowerment is so key. It comes down to clarity as to how vision building, being asked what is in your heart of hearts and what's most important to you, and building around that. And so I just think it's really in their hands, just like it's in your hands and my hands, and nothing will ever be given. So it's just, it's taking step after step after step, whether tired or whether hungry or whether cold or hot or however they feel. It's about working through, and nothing can ever replace that requirement of having an empowerment experience, knowing what you want, and having the confidence to keep going. But the empowerment launch is really, really necessary.
Thank you so much. It has been a very inspiring conversation with you.